I never thought I'd be a father, let alone to a child no one else wanted. After my mother passed away 3 years ago, something inside me changed. There was an emptiness that nothing could fill. Not my job at the accounting firm, not my small circle of friends, not even the occasional dates that never went anywhere. My name is Michael Harmon, and at 38, I found myself standing outside the Bright Futures Adoption Center in Portland on a rainy October morning. I wasn't even sure why I was there. Something my mother had said on her deathbed kept echoing in my mind. Michael, you have so much love to give. Don't let it die with me. Mrs. Peterson, the director, greeted me with tired eyes but a warm smile. Most people want babies or toddlers, she explained as we walked through the facility. The older children are harder to place. That's when I first saw her. In a corner of the common room, a small girl with unruly dark hair sat alone, furiously scribbling in a sketchbook. While other children played together, she remained in her own world. "That's Emma," Mrs. Peterson whispered. "She's 7, been with us for almost 3 years now." "What's her story?" I asked, unable to look away. Mrs. Peterson sighed. "Abandoned at a gas station when she was 4. No identification. She didn't speak for nearly a year after she arrived. She's been through 5 foster placements. They all returned her." "Returned her like a library book?" "Some children struggle with attachment after trauma," she explained. "Emma has difficult behaviors, nightmares, refuses to sleep, claims she sees people who aren't there. The last family brought her back after she covered their walls with drawings." I walked closer, and Emma looked up. Her eyes were the deepest brown I'd ever seen, almost black, and they held such sadness that it physically hurt to maintain her gaze. "Hello," I said awkwardly. "I'm Michael." She didn't respond, just returned to her drawing. "She's talented," Mrs. Peterson offered. "Art seems to be her only connection to the world." I knelt down, careful to give her space. "May I see what you're drawing?" Slowly, she turned her sketchbook around. It was a detailed drawing of a bird in flight, remarkably sophisticated for a child her age. "That's beautiful," I said. "Where did you learn to draw like that?" She shrugged, but didn't look away. "Nobody taught me. I just see things." Those were the first words Emma spoke to me, and something about them broke through the protective shell I'd built around my heart since my mother died. 3 weeks later, after multiple visits and paperwork, I became Emma's foster parent with intent to adopt. The social workers warned me about realistic expectations and handed me a binder full of therapist referrals. Emma arrived at my home with only a small backpack and her sketchbook. I had prepared the second bedroom with new furniture, colorful bedding, and art supplies. "Is this mine?" she asked, standing frozen in the doorway. "Yes, all yours. We can change anything you don't like." She walked in slowly, touching the bed like it might disappear. In the other houses, I had to share, and they took my drawings away at night. My heart constricted. "No one will take your drawings here, Emma. This is your home for as long as you want it to be." That night, I heard her through the wall, talking softly. When I checked, she was arranging her few possessions with careful precision. "Everything okay?" I asked. She nodded without looking at me. "I'm just telling my room that it's not the orphanage anymore." The following weeks were a crash course in parenting a traumatized child. Emma would have moments of quiet cooperation, followed by explosive tantrums. She refused to eat certain foods that touched on the plate. She would sometimes freeze, staring at empty corners of rooms. Her school called regularly. Emma was brilliant but withdrawn. She drew during lessons. She sat alone at lunch. At home, she slowly began to relax. Small things. She would sit closer during movie nights. She started to ask questions about my day. She allowed me to help with homework. But nights remained difficult. Emma's nightmares would wake us both, her screams piercing through the darkness. I'd find her huddled in the corner of her room, eyes wild with fear. There was a lady watching me sleep, she insisted one night, clutching her sketchbook. It was just a dream, I assured her, though the certainty in her voice made the hair on my neck stand up. No, she was real. She had your eyes. I froze. What do you mean? She looks like you, but she's old, and she smiles at me. I didn't sleep much after that conversation. As December approached, I wondered how to handle Christmas. I put up a small tree and hung a few lights, watching for her reaction. She studied everything with solemn interest, but said nothing until she noticed the framed photograph on the mantel. My mother and me from the Christmas before she got sick. "Who's that lady with you?" she asked. "That's my mum. Your grandmother, I suppose. She died a few years ago." Emma stared at the photo for a long time. "She looks nice." "She was the best person I've ever known," I said, surprised by the emotion in my voice. "She would have loved you." On Christmas Eve, Emma was quieter than usual. After dinner, she retreated to the living room with her sketchbook and pencils. For hours, she drew with unusual focus, refusing to show me her work even though she'd become more open about sharing her art. "It's not ready," was all she would say. I wrapped the last of her presents and placed them under the tree, hoping I hadn't chosen wrong with the art set, books and warm clothes. Just before bedtime, Emma approached me with her sketchbook clutched tightly to her chest. "I made something for you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For Christmas." She handed me the sketchbook, open to her latest drawing. I looked down, and my world stopped. It was my mother's face. Not copied from the photograph, but different, older, more serene. The details were perfect, the small scar above her eyebrow, the asymmetrical smile, even the specific way her hair fell around her face when she was happy. "Emma," I whispered, my voice breaking. "How did you—" "I know her," Emma said simply. "She's the lady who watches me sleep. She told me to tell you she's okay and that you did good. She said I'm exactly who you needed." I couldn't speak. The drawing trembled in my hands as I stared at it, then at Emma, whose expression held no guile, just a child sharing something she believed was true. "When did you see her?" I finally asked. "She comes at night sometimes. She sits in the chair and watches me. She tells me stories about you when you were little." Emma tilted her head. "Did you really break your arm jumping off the garage roof with umbrella?" A choked sound escaped me, half laugh, half sob. I had indeed done that at 9, convinced I could fly like Mary Poppins. It wasn't something I'd ever mentioned to Emma. "She said she's been watching us both," Emma continued. "She says I draw just like her mom did, your grandma." Another truth she couldn't have known. My grandmother had been an amateur artist who filled sketchbooks with birds, much like Emma did. I pulled Emma into a gentle hug, and for the first time, she didn't stiffen. Instead, she wrapped her thin arms around my waist. "Is it okay?" she asked, voice muffled against my sweater. "I wasn't supposed to tell anyone at the other houses about the people I see. They said it was lying for attention." "It's more than okay," I assured her, fighting back tears. "It's the best Christmas gift anyone has ever given me." That night, Emma asked if she could sleep in my room. I set up a makeshift bed of blankets on the floor next to mine. For the first time since she'd come to live with me, she fell asleep quickly and slept through the night. In the morning, Emma's excitement over her presence was tempered by an anxious question. "Do you believe me about your mom?" I considered my answer carefully. "I believe that you see her, and I believe that the things you know about her are real." She nodded, satisfied. "Mrs. Peterson said I was being sent back to the center after Christmas. That's what always happens." My heart sank. "Emma, no, that's not happening." I promised you this is your home for as long as you want it, remember? The others promised too. I'm not the others, I said firmly, and I called my lawyer last week. We're filing the final adoption papers after New Year's. If you want that, of course. Her eyes widened. Really? Forever? Forever, I confirmed. But there's something else we should talk about. These people you see, your grandmother saw them too. My mother told me about it once. It scared her when she was young, but her mom helped her understand it was a gift, not something to be afraid of. Emma's expression shifted from surprise to recognition. Your mom told me that too. She said I should tell you so you wouldn't be sad anymore. Later that day, while Emma was absorbed in her new art supplies, I found myself drawn to a storage closet where I'd placed boxes of my mother's belongings, things I hadn't been able to face sorting through. In one box labeled Mom's Journals, I found dozens of sketchbooks similar to Emma's. Flipping through them revealed hundreds of drawings, faces of people I'd never seen, landscapes I didn't recognize, and detailed images of events that seemed to span decades. In the last journal, dated just before her diagnosis, I found an entry that made me sink to the floor. I've seen her again, the little girl with dark hair and serious eyes. She's drawing, always drawing, just like Mother did, just like I do. Somehow I know she's important to Michael, though I don't understand how. But she's coming to him someday, and she'll need him as much as he'll need her. On the facing page was a sketch of a child, unfinished but unmistakable, a small girl with unruly dark hair bent over a sketchbook, her face partially obscured but her intensity obvious in every pencil stroke. It was Emma, drawn 3 years before I would meet her. Spring came, and with it Emma's official adoption day. As we stood before the judge, Emma clutched both her sketchbook and a small framed photo of my mother that she now kept beside her bed. By the power vested in me by the state of Oregon, the judge announced, I hereby declare Emma Claire officially the daughter of Michael James Harmon. The small gathering of friends applauded. Mrs. Peterson wiped away a tear, whispering something about knowing all along this placement would be different. That night, as I tucked Emma into bed, she said, "She's here again. Your mom." I paused, looking at the empty corner where Emma's gaze was fixed. What is she doing? Crying? But the happy kind. Emma smiled. She says we're a family now. She says she brought us together. I reached out to smooth Emma's hair. I think she did. 2 years passed. Emma's sightings continued, though less frequently. Her art developed in remarkable ways, earning praise from teachers and even a spot in a local youth exhibition. She still struggled with some aspects of trust and attachment, but therapy was helping, and our bond grew stronger every day. On the anniversary of her adoption, I surprised Emma with a trip to an art museum in Seattle. As we walked among the exhibits, Emma suddenly stopped before a collection of small watercolors. "Look," she whispered, pointing to the placard. The artist's name was Catherine Harmon, my grandmother. "This was your grandma's work?" Emma asked, eyes wide. I nodded, equally shocked. I'd known my grandmother painted, but not that her work had been collected by museums. Emma studied the paintings with unusual intensity, then turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I didn't know until now," she said softly. "Know what?" "Why I came to you. Why your mom finds me." She pointed to a small watercolor of a bird in flight, nearly identical to the drawing she'd been working on when we first met. "She guided me to you," Emma whispered, "so you wouldn't be alone, and so I could find where I belong." I knelt beside her, my own eyes filling with tears. "You know what this means, don't you?" She tilted her head questioningly. "It means you were meant to be a Harmon all along. You just took a different path to get here." That night, after returning home, Emma asked for help hanging a special picture in her room. The drawing of my mother she'd made that Christmas Eve. She doesn't come much anymore, Emma explained. I think it's because she knows I'm okay now, that we're both okay. I helped her position the frame just right on the wall that 2 years earlier she had still called the orphanage. We are okay, aren't we? I asked. Emma leaned against me, no longer the frightened, withdrawn child I'd first met. We're better than okay, Dad. We're home. The summer after Emma turned 10, I received a call from Mrs. Peterson. An old file had surfaced during their system upgrade, records from the hospital where Emma had been taken when she was found at the gas station. There might be information about her birth family, Mrs. Peterson explained carefully. I thought you should know before we proceed. That evening, I sat Emma down for a difficult conversation. We'd built a life together, but she had a right to know her origins if possible. Would you want to learn about your birth family if we could? I asked gently. Emma considered the question with the seriousness that still characterized her approach to important matters. Would I have to leave you? Never, I assured her. You're my daughter, legally and in every way that matters. Nothing would change that. She nodded slowly. Then I think I want to know, not because I need different parents, just to understand why they left me. The following week, we met with Mrs. Peterson and reviewed the newly discovered file. It contained little. Emma had been found with no identification, wearing clothes from a discount store, with only a small backpack containing a change of clothes, a granola bar, and a sketchbook. Wait, I said, she had a sketchbook when she was found. Emma, is that the same one you still use? Emma shook her head. No, the first family took that one away. They said my drawings were disturbing. Mrs. Peterson made a note. We might be able to locate it in storage. Foster families are supposed to return all personal items. 2 days later, Mrs. Peterson called with news. They'd found the original sketchbook in their archives and we could pick it up. Emma approached the worn blue sketchbook with caution, as if it might contain memories she wasn't sure she wanted to recover. You don't have to look at it if you're not ready, I said. She shook her head. No, I want to see. Together, we opened the book. The first pages contained what you might expect from a very young child: stick figures, basic houses, scribbled colors. But about halfway through, the drawings changed dramatically. They became more detailed, more precise, more like the Emma I knew. I don't remember drawing these, she whispered, turning pages slowly. Near the end of the book, we found something startling. A detailed drawing of a woman's face. A face I recognized instantly. That's my mother, I said, my voice barely audible. Emma stared at the drawing, then at me. I drew your mum before I ever met you. It seems that way. She turned to the final page. There in childish handwriting was a note, "Find this lady's son. He will keep you safe." Below it was a crude map showing streets, landmarks, and a building that, with a chill, I recognized as my apartment complex. Emma, I said carefully, do you remember writing this? Or who might have told you where I lived? She shook her head, her face pale. No, but I remember having dreams about a lady who said she would help me find home. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my mother's journals, about Emma's drawings, about the impossible connections between them. Finally, I got up and went to check on Emma. She was awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed, staring at the framed drawing of my mother. She's here again, Emma said without looking at me. She says it's time to tell you the whole story. I sat down beside her, my heart racing. What story? About how she found me and brought me to you. According to Emma, my mother had been visiting her in dreams since she was very small, long before she was abandoned. Emma described how my mother had taught her to draw, had comforted her when she was afraid, had promised her that someday she would find a real home. The day before, I was left at the gas station. She told me to pack my backpack and hide my sketchbook inside. She said to draw her face and write down the directions to find you. She said someone would find me and take me to a safe place until you were ready. Ready for what? I asked. Emma looked at me directly, her eyes reflecting wisdom beyond her years. Ready to believe that some things can't be explained. Ready to trust that love can find a way, even after death. I thought about my mother's last words to me. You have so much love to give. Don't let it die with me. Somehow, impossibly, she had found a child who needed that love as much as I needed to give it. Your mom says she had to wait until you were ready, Emma continued. She says that's why it took 3 years for us to find each other. And the other families? The ones who returned you? Emma smiled sadly. She says they weren't the right ones. They weren't you. The next morning, I called in sick to work, something I rarely did. Instead, Emma and I drove to the cemetery where my mother was buried. It was Emma's first visit. I hadn't been ready to bring her before. As we stood before the simple headstone, Emma placed a drawing beside the fresh flowers I'd brought. It showed 3 figures holding hands, a woman with my mother's face, a tall man I recognized as myself, and a small girl with unruly dark hair. Do you think she can see it? Emma asked. I looked at my daughter, this extraordinary child who had come into my life through channels I couldn't begin to understand, and felt a certainty I'd never experienced before. I think she's been seeing it all along. 5 years passed, bringing changes both expected and surprising. Emma grew taller, her artistic talents blossomed, and she gradually opened up to friendship with a select few peers who shared her creative interests. But the most significant change came in how she and I had come to understand the unusual bond that had brought us together. On Emma's 15th birthday, we received an unexpected visitor. A lawyer representing the estate of Catherine Harmon, my grandmother, the artist, contacted us about a trust that had been established before her death nearly 30 years earlier. The terms were quite specific, the lawyer explained as we sat in our living room. The trust was to remain sealed until either the year 2025 or until a child matching a very particular description became part of the Harmon family. He handed me a yellowed envelope. Inside was a letter written in my grandmother's flowing script. To whomever opens this letter, though I suspect it will be my grandson Michael, I leave this explanation of what some might call a family gift, though at times it has felt more like a burden. The women in our family line have always had what my mother called the sight. We see things others cannot, glimpses of what might be, connections across time and space that defy explanation. I have used this ability in my art, painting places I've never visited and people I've never met, only to find them later in my life. My daughter, your mother, Michael, inherited this gift in a particularly powerful form. She once told me, when she was just 7 years old, that someday her son would raise a daughter who was not his by birth but by destiny. A dark-haired child who would share our gift for seeing and our need to express it through art. I established this trust in the belief that this child will eventually find her way to our family. Enclosed is the deed to my studio in Cannon Beach, and funds sufficient to ensure that both you and she can pursue art without financial constraint. The gift must be nurtured, not feared, and passed on with love. The lawyer cleared his throat. The description of the child was remarkably specific. Dark hair, brown eyes, artistic ability, abandoned at a young age, and eventually adopted by a Harmon. When your adoption of Emma became official, it triggered the release of the trust. Emma, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. She knew about me, before I was even born? It would seem so, the lawyer replied, clearly uncomfortable with the metaphysical implications. That weekend, we drove to Cannon Beach to see the studio. It was a small but beautiful space, perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, filled with light and my grandmother's unfinished works. As Emma wandered through the space, touching easels and examining paint-spattered tables, she stopped suddenly before a canvas turned to face the wall. When she turned it around, we both gasped. It was us, Emma and me, standing exactly where we were at that moment, looking at a painting. The meta-image should have been impossible. My grandmother had died decades before Emma was born, before this moment could ever have been imagined. "There's something written on the back," Emma said, carefully turning the canvas. In faded pencil were the words, "Welcome home, Emma. We've been waiting for you." Emma's hand found mine, and we stood in silence, surrounded by the tangible proof of an intangible connection that spanned generations. "Do you ever see her anymore?" I asked quietly. "My mother?" Emma shook her head. "Not since I turned 12. I think she finished what she needed to do, which was completing the circle." Emma gestured to the painting, to the studio, to the ocean beyond, bringing me home to where I was always meant to be. On Emma's 18th birthday, she received her acceptance to the Rhode Island School of Design, along with several other prestigious art programs. As we celebrated, she showed me her latest sketchbook, no longer filled with birds or landscapes or faces of strangers, but with designs for a graphic novel. "It's about a family with a gift," she explained. "A grandmother who paints the future, a mother who guides a lost child, and a father who learns to believe in things he cannot see." "Sounds familiar," I smiled. "It's our story," Emma agreed. "But I'm telling it so others might find comfort in it, so they might believe that lost things can be found, that connections exist beyond what we understand, that love can reach across impossible distances." That night, after Emma had gone to sleep, I sat on our porch watching the stars. I thought about the unlikely series of events that had brought Emma into my life. A deathbed promise, an inexplicable drawing, a child abandoned with a map to find me, a grandmother's prediction decades before any of it happened. Science couldn't explain it. Logic rejected it. And yet, here we were, father and daughter, bound not by blood, but by something perhaps more powerful. I felt a familiar presence beside me, though I knew if I turned, I would see only empty space. "Thank you," I whispered to the night, "for knowing what we both needed before either of us did." A warm breeze touched my face, gentle as a mother's caress. And I knew with certainty that some connections never truly break, that love finds ways to bridge even the gap between life and what lies beyond it. Inside, Emma slept peacefully, no longer haunted by nightmares or fear of abandonment. Tomorrow, she would wake and continue becoming the remarkable young woman she was destined to be, artist, visionary, bearer of a gift passed down through generations. And I would continue being what my mother had somehow known I needed to be, not just an accountant, not just a man living alone with grief, but a father, Emma's father. Some might call it coincidence, others might call it faith. But we had come to call it simply our story. Impossible, inexplicable, and undeniably real. As real as the girl who still sometimes called her room the orphanage, though less and less as the years passed. As real as the woman whose face she had drawn that Christmas Eve, though she had never met her in life. As real as the love that had found a way to bridge worlds, bringing healing to us both.